The Wonderful World of Music, A Kid's Guide, Chapter 1. Introduction. What is music? Music is all around us. From the songs you hum at home to the beats you hear on the radio, music is a special kind of sound. It's basically a group of sounds that people arrange in a pleasing or meaningful way, kids. Britannica.com. Every culture in the world has some form of music. It's something all people share. Music can be very simple, like one person tapping a beat on a drum or singing a lullaby, or it can be very complex, like hundreds of instruments playing together in an orchestra, kids. Britannica.com. Music isn't just random noise, it has structure and feeling. Think about your favorite song. It might have a steady beat that makes you tap your foot, a tune you can hum, and maybe other voices or instruments that blend together. Music can make us feel happy, excited, calm, or even sad. It's like a language of emotions that everyone can understand. In this book, we'll explore what makes music so magical and learn about different kinds of music from all over the world. We'll discover the building blocks of music, like notes, rhythms, and chords, and how they work together. We'll meet the families of musical instruments, from the string guitars to booming drums and even modern electronic gadgets. We'll travel through time to see how music has changed from ancient times to today, and we'll visit different genres, styles, of music such as classical, jazz, rock, pop, hip-hop, and more. Along the way, we'll also meet some famous musicians and composers who made music history. There will be fun facts and simple activities, so you can try some music making too. Are you ready to begin our journey through the wonderful world of music? Let's start by learning about the basic ingredients that every piece of music has. Chapter 2. The Building Blocks of Music. Before we dive into music styles and history, it helps to know the basic ingredients that make up music. Think of music like a big cake. It has certain ingredients that can be mixed in different ways to create all kinds of songs. These ingredients are like the language of music. In this chapter, we'll explain them in simple ways, with some fun analogies, so you can understand how music works. The main building blocks we'll cover are notes, scales, chords, rhythm, melody, harmony, tempo, and dynamics. Notes and pitch. Imagine the sounds in music as letters of an alphabet. Those letters are musical notes. Each note represents a specific sound with a certain pitch. Pitch means how high or low a sound is, kids. Kiddle.co. For example, birds chirping make high-pitched sounds, while a bass drum boom is a low-pitched sound. In music, we give names to pitches using the letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G, then it repeats, or sometimes using do, re, mi, like in the song from The Sound of Music. These notes are like the letters that spell out tunes. A sequence of notes in order is called a scale. You can think of a scale like a musical ladder, or the ABCs of music. One common example is the major scale: do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, kids. Kiddle.co. If you sing those, you're actually singing a scale. The next do is the same as the first note, just higher. Scales are important because many songs are built using the notes from a certain scale, kind of like choosing a set of colors to paint with. Fun analogy. If notes are like letters, a melody, tune, is like a sentence, and a scale is like the alphabet that provides the letters. The higher the note on the scale, the higher the pitch. The lower the note, the lower the pitch. Musicians practice scales to get familiar with the notes, just like you practice the alphabet to read and write. Melody. Melody is the part of music you probably notice first. It's the tune you hum or sing. A melody is a series of notes one after the other that make up the main theme of a song, kids. Britannica.com. If you think of music as a story, the melody is the main storyline or the character that you follow. For example, when you sing Happy Birthday, you're singing the melody of that song. Melodies can go up to higher notes, down to lower notes, or stay on the same note, creating a pattern that our ears recognize and enjoy. Kids, Kiddle.co. Try listening for the melody in songs you know. It's usually what the lead singer sings or what a lead instrument, like a violin or flute, plays. Melodies are what make songs memorable. They can be simple, like a nursery rhyme tune, or complex, like a fancy classical piece where the melody twists and turns a lot. But no matter how simple or complex, a good melody is like a good story. It sticks in your head. Harmony and chords. Now, while melody is one note at a time, harmony is what happens when notes are played or sung together at the same time. Kids, Britannica.com. When you hear a group of singers singing different notes that sound nice together, or a guitar playing multiple notes at once under a singer's voice, that's harmony. Harmony adds richness and depth to music, like adding colors to a drawing. One of the most common ways to create harmony is by using chords. A chord is just a group of notes played together, usually 3 or more notes at once. Kids, Britannica.com. If melody is like a line of single notes, one at a time, chords are like stacks of notes. For example, on a piano, if you press 3 keys at the same time, like C, E, and G, you get a C major chord. It has a pleasant, harmonious sound. Chords often accompany a melody. They are the background that supports the tune. Many songs use a pattern of chords repeated in a sequence. If you play guitar or piano, you learn chord shapes to play the harmony of songs. Listening tip: next time you hear a pop song, see if you can notice when the sound fills out underneath the singer. That's likely the chords creating harmony. Harmony makes music sound fuller, just as having friends sing together makes a song sound richer than a solo voice. Rhythm and tempo. Have you ever found yourself tapping your foot or clapping along to a song? That's because of the rhythm. Rhythm is the beat and pattern of lengths of notes in music. Kids, Britannica.com. It's what makes you want to dance. Every song has a beat, a steady pulse, that you can tap along with, kind of like the ticking of a clock or your heartbeat. When you tap your foot to music, you are tapping out the beat. Kids, Britannica.com. Rhythm isn't just the steady beat, though. It's also how notes are arranged in time. Some notes are short, some are long, some are accented, stronger. For example, a waltz has a 1-2-3, 1-2-3 rhythm pattern, whereas a march has a 1-2-1-2 feel. You can think of rhythm as music's pattern of movement. Closely related to rhythm is tempo. Tempo means how fast or slow the beat goes. Kids, Britannica.com. It's basically the speed of the music. If music was a clock, tempo is how quickly the second hand is ticking. A fast tempo song might make you feel excited or want to run around. Imagine a quick dance song, while a slow tempo song might be calm or sad. Imagine a slow lullaby. Musicians use Italian words for tempo like allegro, fast, or lento, slow. But we can just say fast, medium, or slow. The important thing is, tempo sets the mood and energy level of a piece. Analogy: think of rhythm as a train, and tempo as how fast the train is moving. The rhythm is the pattern of the wheels going chugga-chugga on the tracks. It could be chugga-chugga chew, chew, or any pattern, and the tempo is whether the train is moving quickly or slowly down the track. Dynamics: loud and soft. Have you noticed how some parts of music sound loud like thunder and other parts soft like a whisper? That aspect of music is called dynamics. Dynamics means how loud or quiet the music is played. Kids, Kiddle.co. Music isn't meant to be all one volume. Changing the volume makes it more exciting and expressive. For example, a song might start softly so you lean in to listen, then get louder and louder for a big chorus. Or an orchestra might play a gentle melody very quietly, called piano in music terms, and later play a powerful section very loudly, forte in music terms. These changes in dynamics can give you goosebumps. They make music feel alive, like it's breathing. Think of dynamics like volume control and storytelling. If you tell a story, and at the exciting part you suddenly speak louder, it grabs attention. In a sad or delicate part, you might speak softly. In music, composers and musicians do the same thing. They use dynamics to add drama and emotion. So, next time you listen to a song or a piece of classical music, pay attention to the loud parts and soft parts. It's like the music's own volume roller coaster. Putting it together, we've covered a lot of the basic parts. Notes, with pitch, making melodies and scales. Chords, for harmony. Rhythm, with tempo and beat. And dynamics, loud, soft. Musicians mix these ingredients in endless ways to create different songs and styles. For instance, a simple folk song might have an easy melody and rhythm, and just a guitar strumming chords softly. A big symphony might have multiple melodies and harmonies weaving together with changing rhythms and dramatic dynamics. Every piece of music, whether it's your favorite pop song or a classical symphony, uses these building blocks. Now that you know them, you can listen for each part. It's kind of like knowing the secret recipe behind your favorite cookies. As you learn more, you might even start to create your own musical recipes, songs, using these ingredients. Fun fact, musicians have even created a way to write down music using symbols called musical notation. This is like writing the recipe for a song so others can play it. They write notes on a staff, a set of lines, to show the pitch and use different shapes to show how long each note lasts. Skids. Britannica.com. They also use markings to tell how loud or soft to play, and how fast. That way, someone on the other side of the world could read the music and play the same melody and rhythm that you wrote. Isn't it neat that music has its own written language? Now that we've learned the basics of how music works, let's meet the instruments that bring those notes and rhythms to life. Chapter 3. Meet the instruments. Musical instruments and families music can be made with your voice. Everyone has one built in, or with musical instruments of all shapes and sizes. Have you ever played a piano, strummed a guitar, or shaken a tambourine? Those are all musical instruments. Humans have invented hundreds of instruments across different cultures, from the violin in an orchestra to the djembe drum in Africa to modern electronic keyboards. It's helpful to group instruments into families based on how they produce sound. Kids. Britannica.com. Just like a family, instruments in the same group share characteristics. The main instrument families we'll explore are strings, woodwinds, brass, percussion, keyboards, and electronic instruments. Each family has its own way of making music. Let's learn about each. An orchestra is a large group of musicians with many different instruments. In an orchestra, like the one shown above, similar instruments sit together in sections. Strings with strings, woodwinds with woodwinds, and so on. All the families of instruments join together to make a powerful sound fact monster.com. Now, let's meet the families one by one. String family. String instruments make sound with vibrating strings. These instruments usually have tight strings stretched over them, and when the strings vibrate, we hear a musical note. Kids. Britannica.com. You can vibrate a string by plucking, tugging at it, bowing, drawing a bow across it, like with a violin, or sometimes striking it, like hitting a string inside a piano with a tiny hammer. The vibration of the string creates the sound, a bit like how a rubber band makes a sound if you stretch and pluck it. Common string instruments include the violin, viola, cello, and double bass. Those are the ones you see in orchestras, held in the arms or standing on the floor. There's also the guitar and harp, and many others around the world, like the sitar in India or the kora in Africa. They all use strings. Smaller string instruments, shorter strings, usually have higher pitches, and larger ones, longer, thicker strings, have lower pitches. For example, a violin has a high sweet sound, while a big double bass can play very low notes. How do these sound? A violin or guitar string, when plucked or bowed, produces a nice tone that can be soft or loud. If you press the string down in different places, you change the length that vibrates, which changes the pitch. That's how you play different notes. Fun fact. On a guitar, the frets, the metal bars on the fingerboard, help you shorten the string to get different notes. On a violin or cello, you place your fingers directly on the string to shorten it. It's a bit like how, if you have a long ruler hanging off a table and you twang it, it makes a low sound. But if you make the hanging part shorter, the sound gets higher. That's the principle of string instruments. One famous string instrument that almost everyone has heard is the piano. Wait, piano? It has strings inside too, did you know that? When you press a piano key, a hammer inside hits a string to make the note. So, the piano technically is a string instrument and a percussion instrument because it's hit. Some people put it in its own keyboard family, more on that later. In any case, strings are at the heart of many instruments we love. Woodwind family. Woodwind instruments produce sound when you blow air into them. Wind refers to the breath. They got the name woodwind because many were traditionally made of wood, and you use wind, air, to play them. In woodwinds, the air you blow vibrates inside the instrument's tube to make soundfactmonster.com. Examples of woodwinds are the flute, clarinet, oboe, bassoon, and saxophone. Yes, even though a saxophone is made of shiny brass metal, it's classified as a woodwind because of how it makes sound using a reed. Some woodwinds use a reed, which is a thin piece of wood that vibrates when you blow. Clarinets and saxophones have a single reed on the mouthpiece. Oboes and bassoons use a double reed, two reeds vibrating against each other. Other woodwinds, like the flute, don't use a reed. Instead, you blow across a hole, similar to blowing across the top of a bottle, to make the air vibrate. The flute has a sweet, bright sound, often playing the high, bird-like melodies in music. The clarinet has a warm, rich tone. The oboe sound is more nasal and piercing. It often tunes the orchestra with its clear note. The bassoon plays very low and has a warm, buzzing tone. Woodwinds often play melodies but also harmonies. In an orchestra, they add color to the sound. Ever tried blowing into a bottle to make a tone? That's essentially how a flute works. Your breath creates a vibration in the tube of the instrument. And when you press the keys on a woodwind instrument, you open or close holes, which changes the length of the tube the air travels through, thus changing the pitch. A longer air path makes a lower note. A shorter path makes a higher note. Pretty cool, right? Brass family. Brass instruments are the ones you see shining and gleaming, usually made of metal. Brass is a type of metal. These instruments also make sound by blowing air, but they have a special twist. You have to buzz your lips against a mouthpiece, which makes the air in the instrument vibrate. Factmonster.com. Think of making a raspberry sound with your lips. That vibration is what brass instruments need. Instruments in the brass family include the trumpet, trombone, French horn, and tuba, among others. They are the loud, bold voices of the orchestra or band. For example, the trumpet is high and bright, great for fanfares. The trombone has a slide and can play a wide range of notes with a strong sound. The French horn has a warm, mellow tone but can be very powerful too. The tuba is the big, deep one, laying down the lowest notes like the base of a musical pyramid. Brass players change notes by changing their lip buzz tightness to hit higher or lower series of tones, and by pressing valves, buttons, or moving a slide, for trombone, change the length of tubing. When you press a valve, it opens up more tubing for the air to go through, making the note lower. The trombone slide literally makes the instrument longer or shorter, which changes the pitch continuously. Brass instruments can be very loud. Think of an exciting trumpet solo or the powerful sound of trombones in a movie score. But they can also play softly and beautifully. They often play hero-like melodies or support the music with grand harmonies. Because they require lip buzzing, playing brass can be a workout. Musicians develop strong lip muscles, called the embouchure. If you've ever pressed your lips together and made them buzz, you know it tickles. Brass players turn that funny buzz into music. Percussion family. If you like hitting, shaking, or scraping things to make cool sounds, you might love percussion. The percussion family is all about instruments that you play by striking or shaking, and they keep the rhythm and add exciting accents to music. In fact, the word percussion comes from hitting. Drums are the most famous percussion instruments, but there are many more. Cymbals, xylophones, triangles, maracas, bongos, tambourines, the list goes on. Most percussion instruments make sound when you hit them, and they vibrate. Factmonster.com. For a drum, you hit a stretched skin or plastic, the drumhead, and it vibrates to produce a boom or tap. For a cymbal, you crash two metal plates together or hit one with a stick to get a splashy crash sound. A xylophone or glockenspiel has metal or wooden bars you strike, which ring out with specific notes. Yes, some percussion can play melodies, like a xylophone, which is set up like a piano keyboard. Maracas and shakers make sound when you shake them, and the beads inside rattle. Even a triangle, that little metal triangle you hit with a metal beater, makes a shimmering ring when struck. Percussion is often called the heartbeat of music, because drums and other percussion usually keep the beat or pulse so everyone can follow the rhythm. In a band or orchestra, the percussion section might include the timpani, big kettle drums that can be tuned to certain notes, snare drum, a drum with metal wires that make a sharp rattling sound, bass drum, the big deep boom, cymbals, and more. They add drama. Imagine a big cymbal crash at a climax of a song or the steady tick-tock on a woodblock imitating a clock. One fun thing about percussion is that almost anything can be a percussion instrument if you hit it. Pots and pans, your desk, or clapping your hands. Yes, hands are a percussion instrument too. Clapping is likely the oldest percussion sound people made. Because of this, percussion instruments exist in every culture. Hand drums like djembes in Africa, tabla in India, taiko drums in Japan, and so on. They all bring the rhythm to the music. Fun fact. Remember we mentioned the piano earlier? Some classify it as a percussion instrument because it uses hammers to strike strings. Also, instruments like the xylophone or marimba have bars you hit, so they are melodic percussion. Percussion is a very broad family. Basically, if you hit it and it makes a sound, it's percussion. Keyboard family. Keyboard instruments are unique because they are defined by how you play them. With a keyboard, a set of keys you press with your fingers. When you press the keys, something in the instrument creates the sound. The most well-known keyboard instrument is the piano. There's also the organ, found in churches, with keyboards and big pipes or electronic sound. The accordion, which has buttons or keys and you squeeze it to push air through reeds. And electronic keyboards and synthesizers, which we'll talk about soon in the electronic section. We already learned that the piano has strings and hammers, so it's like a crossover of string and percussion. In fact, because it has strings, some people put it in the string family. And because it's hit by hammers, some put it in percussion. It's both factmonster.com. But we often give pianos and similar instruments their own category called keyboard instruments. The advantage of keyboard instruments is that one musician can play many notes at once and cover a lot of musical range. For instance, on a piano, your left hand can play low notes, maybe harmony or bass line, and your right hand can play high notes, maybe melody. At the same time, it's like having an entire band at your fingertips. That's why many composers like to write music on the piano. You can hear the full music, harmony, and melody together. Organs produce sound by pushing air through pipes for pipe organs, or using electronics in modern organs. They often have multiple keyboards and even foot pedals. A single organist can sound like an orchestra. Accordions produce sound with reeds inside when air is pushed, pulled. You play melody on one side keyboard and chords on buttons with the other hand. In modern times, electronic keyboards and synthesizers have become very popular. We'll cover them more next. They also have piano-like keys, but generate sound electronically. If you've ever played on a little electric music keyboard at home or school, you've used a keyboard instrument. They're very versatile. You can play any style on them, from classical pieces to pop songs. The layout of keys, the pattern of black and white keys on a piano, is a universal pattern for Western music notes, and learning it means you can play lots of instruments that use that setup. Electronic instruments. Electronic instruments are a more recent family that produce sound using electricity, circuits, and computer technology. Unlike traditional instruments that rely on vibrating strings or air or skins, electronic instruments generate sound through electronic means and speakers. Think of the sounds in video games or the beats in electronic dance music. Those often come from electronic instruments. Examples include the synthesizer, an electronic keyboard that can create tons of different sounds, drum machines, which make drum and percussion sounds electronically, and the use of computers or digital devices to create and mix music. Even an electric guitar can be considered partially electronic. The guitar itself has metal strings, so it's a string instrument, but without electricity it's very quiet. It uses electronic amplification to make a loud sound through an amp and speakers. With electronic instruments, musicians can mimic the sounds of other instruments, or create completely new sounds that don't exist in nature. For example, a synthesizer can sound like a piano, a flute, or a spaceship zapping aliens, all by turning knobs or pressing keys, because it's basically a sound computer. DJ turntables, where DJs scratch records to make rhythmic sounds, are also a kind of electronic instrument setup, blending technology and music. Today, a lot of pop, hip-hop, and dance music uses electronic instruments or electronic production. Artists use software on laptops to compose songs, layering different tracks of drums, bass, and melody, all electronically generated or sampled, recorded. Electronic music can be very precise. You can program a drum beat to be exactly the same every time, or it can be experimental, making sounds no acoustic instrument could. Fun fact: the first electronic instrument is often said to be the theremin, invented in 1920. It's an odd instrument you play without touching. You move your hands near two metal antennas, one controlling pitch and the other volume. It makes ghostly woo-woo sounds. You might have heard it in old sci-fi movies. This showed that with electricity, music had a whole new playground. Today's electronic instruments are much more advanced, but it all started with early inventors dreaming of new sounds. A world of instruments. We've introduced the main families, but it's worth noting that around the world there are many unique instruments beyond the typical orchestra or band. For example, the sitar plucked string instrument from India, the shakuhachi, a Japanese bamboo flute, the djembe, an African hand drum, the bagpipes, a wind instrument from Scottish tradition, and the steel drum from Trinidad, made from a metal barrel. Every culture developed instruments using local materials, wood, metal, animal skins, etc., showing human creativity in making music. No matter what instrument someone plays, they all share the goal: to create musical sounds and express feelings. Some instruments you wear, like a guitar or an accordion. Some you sit at piano, drum set. Some you carry, violin, trumpet, and some you even plug in electric guitar. Synthesizer. There's an instrument for everyone. If you're drawn to melody, maybe a violin or flute. If you love rhythm, perhaps drums. If you like harmony, piano or guitar might suit you. Try this. Think about which instrument family you find most interesting. You could even try making a simple instrument at home. For strings, stretch rubber bands over a box to pluck. For percussion, use a pot as a drum, or fill a jar with rice as a shaker. For winds, try blowing across a bottle top like a flute. You'll be making music in no time. Next, let's explore the different kinds of music, genres. People play on all these instruments. Music doesn't all sound the same. We have everything from classical symphonies to rock songs. Off we go to discover musical genres. Chapter 4. Musical Genres. Exploring different styles of music. Just as there are different genres of books or movies, like adventure, comedy, mystery, music also comes in many genres. which is a fancy word for different styles or types of music. Each genre has its own flavor, history, and sound. In this chapter, we'll take a tour through a variety of music genres, including classical, jazz, rock, pop, hip-hop, and more. We'll learn what makes each unique and where they came from. You might even discover a new favorite style of music. Classical music. Classical music generally refers to the formal musical tradition that developed in Europe long ago and continues today. When we say classical, we often think of music by composers like Wolfgang, Amadeus, Mozart, Ludwig van Beethoven, or Johann Sebastian Bach. This music is often written down in musical notation and performed by orchestras, chamber groups, or solo instruments like piano or violin. Classical music is known for its rich harmonies and structured forms, like symphonies, sonatas, concertos, that evolved over several centuries. Kids, Britannica.com. Classical music actually includes music from several periods in history. We'll cover them in the history chapter. There's Baroque, fancy, decorative music like Bach or Vivaldi. Classical period, clear, balanced music like Mozart and Haydn. Romantic, emotional and dramatic like Beethoven, Tchaikovsky. And 20th century classical, sometimes experimental. But in general, when kids hear classical music, it might mean orchestral or instrumental music that isn't pop or jazz. It's the kind you might hear in a concert hall or sometimes in movies as background for epic scenes. How does classical music sound? It can range widely. It might be a gentle piano piece like Für Elise, or a powerful symphony with 100 musicians playing together. Classical music often doesn't have words, lyrics, especially the instrumental pieces, so it expresses itself purely with musical notes. It can be very moving. It might tell a story or paint a scene without a single word. For example, Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf uses different instruments to represent characters in a story, and Beethoven's symphonies can take you on an emotional journey just through sound. Classical music might seem old, but it's still very much alive. Orchestras around the world play it, and it even shows up in cartoons, movies, and video game music influences. If you've heard the intense da-da-da-dum opening of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, or the beautiful melody of Clair de Lune by Debussy, you've tasted classical music. It's like a musical museum with masterpieces that never get old. Jazz is a cool, toe-tapping genre of music that began around 1900 in New Orleans, USA. Kids, Kittle.co. What makes jazz special? It has a strong but flexible rhythm called swing, and it features a lot of improvisation, which means making up music on the spot. Jazz musicians often take turns playing solos where they invent new melodies right then and there. It's like a musical conversation, spontaneous and full of feeling. Jazz has its roots in the blues and in African and African American musical traditions. Kids, Kittle.co. Early jazz bands used instruments like trumpets, saxophones, clarinets for melody, and drums, piano, or bass for rhythm. One of the most famous early jazz musicians was Louis Armstrong, a trumpet player and singer known for his gravelly voice and joyful improvisations. Kids, Kittle.co. He helped make jazz popular all over the world. When you listen to jazz, you might notice the music has a swinging beat. This means, instead of straight, even beats, it has a long, short, lilting feel that makes you want to sway or dance. Kids, Kittle.co. Drums in jazz often play something called the swing rhythm on cymbals. Ding, ding, a ding. A kind of skip in the beat that gives jazz its groove. The bass, often a double bass, usually plays a walking pattern, walking bass line, that moves the music forward step by step. Jazz pieces often start with a main tune, called the head, then go into improvised solos. During solos, each musician might show off their creativity, like a saxophonist making up a soulful melody, or a pianist doing fancy runs, while the others accompany. Then they usually return to the main tune at the end. It's never exactly the same twice, And that's the fun of jazz. There are many styles of jazz. Swing, big band music for dancing, like Glenn Miller's band. Bebop, fast, complex jazz that can sound crazy and fun. Cool jazz, more relaxed and smooth. And more. Jazz also influenced other genres, and many pop songs or film scores use jazzy elements. If you've ever heard someone scatting, that's a jazz thing too. Scat singing is when singers make up nonsense syllables like doobie dooba to solo with their voice like an instrument. Jazz is truly an American art form that became global. It's music that celebrates freedom and expression. As one jazz musician said, "It's the notes you don't play that matter as much as the ones you do," meaning jazz has a lot of feel and personal touch. Give jazz a try. Maybe listen to What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong or some lively Duke Ellington big band tune, and see if you start snapping your fingers. Rock and roll, rock music, get ready to rock. Rock and roll, or just rock, is a genre that exploded in popularity in the 1950s and beyond. It began in the mid-20th century, growing out of blues, country, and earlier pop music. Early rock and roll was all about energy, catchy beats, and youthful spirit. It introduced a strong backbeat, emphasis on beats 2 and 4 in a measure, the parts that make you clap or stomp, and often featured the electric guitar as a star instrument. One of the first big rock and roll stars was Elvis Presley, often called the King of Rock and Roll. In the 1950s, he made teens go wild with songs like Hound Dog and Jailhouse Rock, shaking his hips and singing with a new kind of excitement. Rock and roll had arrived. Kids, Kiddle, Co. Early rock was actually shocking to some parents back then, because it was loud, rhythmic, and made kids want to dance like crazy. It was the pop music of the day and a symbol of teenage rebellion and fun. As the 1960s came, rock music kept evolving. The Beatles, a band from England, became one of the most famous groups ever. Kids, Kiddle.co. They started with rock and roll influenced pop, She Loves You, I Wanna Hold Your Hand, and then expanded rock's possibilities with creative songwriting and studio techniques. Other bands like the Rolling Stones brought a grittier bluesy rock. Rock split into subgenres: rock, general, hard rock, folk rock, psychedelic rock, etc. As artists experimented. A typical rock band has electric guitars, a bass guitar, and drums, plus often a singer, and sometimes keyboards. Guitars in rock are often amplified and can have a distorted sound. Think of the crunchy guitar sound in rock anthems. The drums lay down a steady, driving beat. The songs usually have a strong rhythm that makes you nod your head or dance, and they often follow a verse-chorus structure with a memorable chorus that everyone sings along to. Rock music can be loud and aggressive, like in hard rock or heavy metal, or soft and melodic, like in ballads or soft rock. By the 1970s and 80s, we got arena rock, big anthems in stadiums, punk rock, fast and raw, with bands like the Ramones, heavy metal, very loud and heavy, like Metallica, and so on. But all these share the rock spirit, a strong beat, prominent guitars, and an attitude of passion and freedom. Fun fact: the term rock and roll was African American slang for dancing or having a good time, and DJs in the early 50s used it to describe this new upbeat music. One early rock and roll hit often credited as a starting point was Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley. His Comets in 1954. When kids danced to that, the rock era had begun. Today, rock music is classic and continues in various forms. Even if new genres have emerged, people still love blasting a good rock song and perhaps playing a bit of air guitar, pretending to play guitar during a solo. Go ahead and try a classic, like Johnny B. Good by Chuck Berry, or Beat It by Michael Jackson, which has a famous rock guitar solo. You might find yourself wanting to move to that rock beat. Pop music. Pop music is short for popular music. and it basically means music that is enjoyed by a large number of people. The hits you hear on the radio. The songs that top the charts. Pop isn't just one sound, but generally, pop songs are catchy, with strong hooks, memorable choruses, and are usually 3-4 minutes long. The term pop music has been used since around the 1950 skids, Britannica.com, and it has evolved with each decade. Pop can include elements of rock, R&B, electronic, hip-hop, and more. Whatever is popular at the time tends to be pop. For example, in the 1960s, the Beatles were considered pop rock and had tons of hits. In the 1980s, Michael Jackson was crowned the king of pop for his incredible popularity and catchy songs like Thriller and Beat It and Wikipedia.org. Pop often emphasizes melody and chorus, something you can easily sing along with. It also often has a danceable beat, since many pop songs are also dance songs. Modern pop stars include singers like Taylor Swift, Beyoncé, Justin Bieber, Katy Perry, and so on. Their songs are played worldwide and often target radio friendliness, meaning they grab your attention quickly with a good beat or chorus. Pop production today often uses a lot of electronic instruments, synthesizers, drum machines, and studio effects to create a polished sound. But at its heart, a good pop song usually can be stripped down to a simple melody and chords that are just really appealing to the ear. One hallmark of pop music is that it's typically verse-chorus form. The verses tell a story or set up ideas, and the chorus is the catchy part that repeats, usually the part you remember and sing later. Think of the chorus of Let It Go from Frozen. Super catchy and memorable. That's what pop aims for. Lyrics in pop songs often talk about universal themes like love, friendship, dancing, and feelings that many people, especially young people, relate to. Pop music changes with the times. In the 70s, we had disco, a kind of dance pop. In the 80s, there were synth pop and dance pop styles, with electronic keyboards and drum machines. In the 90s, we saw boy bands and girl groups like NSYNC, Spice Girls, and pop rock. In the 2000s and 2010s, pop blended a lot with hip-hop and EDM, electronic dance music, so you'd hear rap sections in pop songs or heavy electronic beats. But whether it's a upbeat dance pop song or a pop ballad, slow song, on the charts, the goal is the same. Make music that lots of people enjoy and remember. It's called popular music for a reason. It's the music you might sing in the shower or with friends because it's just so darn catchy. So next time you have a song stuck in your head, chances are it's a pop song. Maybe that catchy melody or hook is doing its job. Don't be afraid to sing along. Pop music is for everyone to enjoy. Hip-hop and rap hip-hop is more than just music. It's a whole culture that started in the 1970s in the Bronx, New York City kids, Kittle.co. But the musical part of hip-hop is what we'll focus on, especially rap music. Rap is a style where artists speak or chant lyrics with rhythm and rhyme over a strong beat kids, Kittle.co. It's like rhythmic storytelling. You might notice rap doesn't usually have a sung melody, though modern rap often mixes singing and rapping. Instead, the interest comes from the clever words, rhyme patterns, and the flow, how the words rhythmically fit into the beat. Hip-hop music often features DJs and producers who create beats. The beats are made by sampling, using snippets of other songs, or programming drum machines and synthesizers. A classic hip-hop beat might have a thumping bass drum on beats 1 and 3, a snare on 2 and 4, and a funky bass line or sampled melody looping. Over that, rappers deliver verses, which can be about anything. Their life, struggles, fun, social issues, often with poetic devices and wordplay. One of the foundations of hip-hop was DJing, where DJs, like DJ Kool Herc, often credited as a pioneer, would use 2 turntables to loop the instrumental break of funk or disco songs so people could dance longer. This gave birth to the breakdance culture and the idea of breakbeats. Rapping evolved as MCs, the ones who spoke on the mic, would hype up the crowd and add rhymes over these beats. Hip-hop also includes other elements like breakdancing, a style of street dance, and graffiti art, making it a broader cultural movement Kiddle.co. But musically, hip-hop, rap has become a dominant genre worldwide. By the 2000s, hip-hop was super popular in the US and beyond Kiddle.co. Artists like Run D, MC, and the Sugar Hill Gang were early famous rap groups. The Sugar Hill Gang had one of the first big rap hits with Rapper's Delight in 1979. Later, stars like Tupac Shakur, the notorious B.I.G., Eminem, Jay-Z, and many others became very famous, and their music often tells powerful stories about city life, personal experiences, or just having a good time. Kiddle, co-kids, Kidle. So, a lot of kids might recognize hip-hop from the catchy beats they hear on the radio, or from dances like the dab or floss, which went viral in pop culture. Also, modern pop music often includes rap sections, showing how hip-hop influenced other genres. One cool thing about rap is how rhythmic and rhyming the lyrics are. Rappers might rhyme not just at line ends, but internally, and play with words creatively. It's like musical poetry. There's even beatboxing, where someone makes beat sounds with their mouth, allowing a person to rap over an a cappella beat. No instruments, just human-made sounds. Fun fact: there's a Guinness World Record for fastest rapper. One person rapped 723 syllables in 51 seconds. Kiddle.co. That shows how rap can treat the voice almost like a fast percussion instrument firing out words. Hip-hop today is very diverse, from party songs that make you dance to serious songs about life and society. It's a voice from many people's experiences and has a huge impact on music and culture globally. Other genres and world music. We've touched on some big genres, but there are many more styles of music out there. Music is as diverse as people are. Here are a few more genres and musical traditions to know about. Blues. The blues is a soulful style that originated in the African American communities of the southern U.S. in the late 1800s. Blues songs often have heartfelt lyrics about life's ups and downs. They typically follow a pattern. 12-bar blues is common, and use blue notes that give a feeling of sadness or emotion. The blues heavily influenced jazz, rock, and R&B. When you hear a guitarist bending notes in a soulful way, that's the blues spirit. Country music. Country music began in the rural southern United States, drawing from folk and blues. It often features guitars, especially acoustic and slide guitars, fiddles, violins, banjos, and heartfelt singing with a twang. Country songs tell stories about love, heartache, family, and good times. It's like storytelling with music. Modern country can range from old-timey styles to country pop that you hear on today's radio. Ever hear of Johnny Cash or Dolly Parton? They're country legends. Reggae. Originating from Jamaica, reggae has a laid-back, groovy feel. The rhythm is distinctive, often emphasizing the offbeats, beats 2 and 4, which gives it a bouncy, relaxed groove. Reggae is often associated with Bob Marley, the most famous reggae artist, who brought songs like One Love and Three Little Birds to the world. Reggae often carries messages of love, unity, and sometimes social issues, all with that island vibe that makes you feel chill. Latin music. This is a broad category, but Latin music includes styles like salsa, merengue, tango, bossa nova, and more, coming from Latin American countries. These styles often have lively rhythms and are used for dancing. For example, salsa music, from the Caribbean and New York, has energetic percussion, bongos, congas, timbales, and brass, and is great for partner dancing. Mariachi music from Mexico features violins, trumpets, and guitars, including a big bass guitar called a guitarron, and it's often performed by dressed-up bands at celebrations. Folk music. Remember, folk music is the traditional music of everyday people, kids. Britannica.com. Every country has its folk songs. These are usually simple songs passed down through generations, often telling local stories or used for dances. For example, American folk might include "This Land Is Your Land" or "Oh Susanna." In Ireland, folk music features fiddles and flutes playing jigs and reels. In China, traditional folk music might be played on instruments like the erhu, a two-string fiddle, or pipa, a lute. Folk music is like the musical heart of each culture. Electronic dance music, EDM. In recent times, EDM has been huge. This is music made mostly by DJs and producers on computers, designed to dance to. It includes subgenres like techno, house, trance, dubstep, etc. You may have heard that wub-wub sound of dubstep or the pulsing beat of a techno track. EDM songs often build up and have a drop, a moment where the beat kicks in heavily and everyone goes wild on the dance floor. World music. This term is used to describe music from cultures around the world that may not fit into Western categories. For example, Indian classical music, with sitar and tablas, West African drumming ensembles, Japanese koto zither, music, Aboriginal Australian didgeridoo music, and so on. The world is full of rich musical traditions. Instruments and scales can be very different from Western ones, but they're beautiful in their own ways. Exploring world music can feel like traveling the globe with your ears. There are many more genres, like metal, R&B, soul, gospel, opera, musical theater, etc. But the key point is, music comes in countless styles, each with its own vibe and history. And guess what? Musicians often mix genres to create new ones. For instance, pop and rock mixed to form pop rock, or country and rock mixed to form country rock. Hip-hop mixed with jazz gives jazz rap. The possibilities are endless, and new genres keep emerging. Pro tip: be an adventurous listener. Try listening to a genre you're not familiar with. You might discover something awesome. Don't worry if some genres don't grab you. Everyone has different tastes. That's the joy of music. There's something for everyone. Now that we've toured the variety of music styles, let's time travel through the history of music. How did we go from ancient folk songs to Beethoven's symphonies to hip-hop beats? Let's find out. Chapter 5. A Musical Journey Through Time. The History of Music. Music has been with us since before recorded history. It's as old as humanity. Over thousands of years, music has changed and grown, influenced by different cultures, new inventions, and creative geniuses. In this chapter, we'll travel through time to see how music evolved across different eras: prehistoric and ancient times, the Middle Ages, Renaissance, Baroque, Classical, Romantic, 20th century, and modern times. It's like a time machine tour of musical history. Along the way, we'll note what was happening in different parts of the world too, because every culture has its own musical story. Prehistoric and ancient music. In the prehistoric times, before people wrote things down, we can only guess what music was like. Early humans definitely made music. Maybe by clapping hands, drumming on logs or stones, or blowing on hollow bones. Kids. Kittle.co. They might have listened to nature's sounds, like bird songs or the rhythm of rain, and tried to imitate them. Kids. Kittle.co. Music might have been used in rituals, storytelling, or just for fun and expression even before language fully developed. Archaeologists have found some ancient instruments. For example, the voice was likely the first instrument people could sing or chant. Kids.co. The earliest physical instrument discovered so far is flutes made from animal bone. One famous find is the Divye Bay bone flute, found in a cave in Slovenia. It's basically a cave bear's leg bone with holes in it, and it could be around 43 years old. Kids, Kittle.co. Scientists debate a bit if it was definitely an instrument, but many think it was. Ancient bone flute. This photo shows the Divje Babe flute, a musical instrument made from a cave bear's bone, possibly over 40 years old. Kids, Kittle.co. Early humans may have blown into the holes to create different pitches, making a simple music scale. It's amazing to think someone so long ago might have played tunes on this. People also likely used drums very early. If you stretch animal skin over a hollow log or pot, you get a drum, and drums have been found in ancient cultures worldwide. So have simple string instruments. Imagine a hunting bow also producing a musical twang when plucked. Moving into ancient civilizations like ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, China, Greece, etc., we start to have some records of music. For instance, the oldest written music piece discovered is from Mesopotamia, modern Iraq, on a clay tablet about 500 years old, from around 1500 BCE. Kids, Kittle.co. It's called the Hurrian Songs. We also know ancient Egyptians had harps and flutes, and music was part of their ceremonies. Ancient Chinese writings talk about music, and they had instruments like pan flutes and string zithers. In ancient India, texts describe musical scales, ragas, and instruments like the veena, a string instrument. In ancient Greece, music was very important. The word music even comes from the Greek musike, meaning the art of the museskids, Kittle.co. Greeks played lyres, small harps, and a flute-like instrument called the aulos. They even had competitions and mythology about music, like the god Apollo and the muse Euterpe. Greek music had modes, similar to scales, and they used music in their theater and poetry. We found some Greek music written down using their notation on stone, but not enough to fully know how it all sounded. One famous bit of ancient music is the Sakilos epitaph, from Greece around Honest century CE. It's a short song carved on a tombstone with musical notation, essentially telling readers to enjoy life. It's the oldest complete song we have with notation. Overall, ancient music varied by place. For example, ancient tribal music in Africa heavily used drums and rhythm. Some African drumming traditions today are thought to be very old. Indigenous music in the Americas included flutes, drums, and vocal chants. Wherever humans lived, they found a way to make music. It's a natural human trait. Medieval music, Middle Ages. The Middle Ages, approximately 5th to 15th century after the fall of Rome, brought new developments in music, especially in Europe. During this time, much music wasn't written down. Lots of folk music continued. Songs for work, dance, or story, passed down orally. Kids, Kittle, taught, co. But the music that was written was mostly for the church. A lot of what we know about medieval music comes from church music, because monks developed early music notation to preserve sacred songs. A key style of this era was Gregorian chant, named after Pope Gregory I. These chants were simple vocal melodies sung in Latin by monks. They had a calm, flowing sound with no instruments, and all singers sang the same melody. This is called monophonic music, one line of music at a time. Kids, Kittle.co. It was meant for worship and had a serious, spiritual tone. Aside from chants, people in medieval times definitely enjoyed folk songs and dances. We have some surviving songs about chivalrous knights, love ballads, etc., often sung by traveling musicians called troubadours or minstrels. These folks would entertain in villages or courts, playing lutes, fiddles, early violins, or harps and singing songs. Since most people couldn't read or write, these songs spread by hearing and repeating. One famous example of early written secular, non-religious, music is a round called Summer is Ikumen in, meaning summer is coming in. from around 1250 AD, England. It's basically a cheerful song celebrating the coming of summer, and it's in the form of a round, like row, row, row your boat, where people start at different times. Kids, Kiddle.co. Instruments in medieval Europe included flutes, recorders, lutes, like a pear-shaped guitar, hurdy-gurdies, a strange instrument where you turn a crank and press keys to rub strings, bagpipes, and basic fiddles and drums. People danced to lively tunes played on these. Medieval music gradually moved from monophonic, one melody, to polyphonic, meaning multiple independent melodies at once. By the late Middle Ages, composers were layering voices in interesting ways, especially in church music. This set the stage for the next era, the Renaissance. Renaissance music, 1000, 400, 1600. Renaissance means rebirth. In the Renaissance period, there was a big revival in art, science, and yes, music. This period saw the invention of music printing around 1500, which meant music could be copied and shared more easily, kind of like how the printing press did for books. So, music books became more common, and composers could reach wider audiences. Renaissance music is often very polyphonic, multiple melodies interweaving in a beautiful texture. Kidle. Ko. A good image is to think of a braid made of different strands. Renaissance music often sounds like that, with different vocal parts, all doing their own thing, yet blending harmoniously. An example would be the music of Giovanni da Palestrina, an Italian composer who wrote gorgeous church music for choirs, where each singer had a different melody that together formed rich chord skids. Kiddle.co. Much of Renaissance music was vocal, both sacred, like masses and motets for church, and secular, like madrigals, which were songs about love or nature, sung in harmony by a small group of people for fun. Madrigals often used clever effects, like word painting, making the music directly reflect the lyrics. E.g., if the lyrics say, running down, the melody might quickly descend. Instrumental music became more popular too. The violin family started to develop out of medieval fiddles. The lute was super popular for solo music and for accompanying songs. Think of someone in a Shakespeare play singing with a lute. Keyboard instruments like the harpsichord, a plucked keyboard instrument, and organ were used in homes and churches. There was also plenty of dance music in the Renaissance. Kings and queens loved dancing, so composers wrote many dances, pavans, galliards, allemandes, etc. These were often performed by ensembles of instruments. One interesting group of instruments was called a consort, which meant a set of instruments of the same family in different sizes, like a consort of recorders, small recorder, medium, large, to cover different ranges. Across cultures during this period, while Europe had its Renaissance, other parts of the world had rich music too. For instance, in the Middle East and Ottoman Empire, classical music traditions with lutes, ouds, and fiddles, rebabs, thrived. In India, the Mughal period saw growth in classical music forms like Drupad. In China, the Ming dynasty had elegant court music. So, the Renaissance in Europe is one piece of the global puzzle, but it's the one that influenced Western music development directly. All in all, Renaissance music sounds smoother and more flowing than medieval music. It's often very pretty and balanced, reflecting the Renaissance ideals of harmony and order. If you listen to a choir singing a Palestrina Mass or an English madrigal like Now is the Month of Maying, you'll hear that flowing, interweaving style. Baroque music, 1600, 1750. Next up, the Baroque era. The word Baroque originally meant oddly shaped pearl, something beautiful but kind of ornate and extravagant, which fits the music of this period. Baroque music is full of ornamentation, fancy trills and fast notes. and expressive contrasts, loud versus soft, solo versus ensemble. Kids, Kittel.co. It was a time of great composers like Johann Sebastian Bach, George Frideric Handel, and Antonio Vivaldi. One big development in the Baroque era was the invention of opera around 1600. Opera is a form of theater where everything is sung. The early Baroque composers in Italy started this, blending music and drama. It quickly became a popular entertainment for the rich. Imagine going to an opera like people go to movies today, to see a story with music, sets, costumes, etc. Baroque music also saw the rise of instrumental music to equal importance with vocal music. Orchestras began to form, not quite as large as later orchestras, but the idea of a group of strings with some woodwinds, brass, and harpsichord was established. Violins really came into their own. A famous piece you might know is Vivaldi's The Four Seasons, 1720s, which paints scenes of spring, summer, fall, winter, with a violin soloist and orchestra. That's Baroque music. Bach, one of the greatest composers ever, wrote in the Baroque style. His music, like the Brandenburg concertos or his many fugues, a complex form of imitative polyphony, are full of energy and intricate patterns. If you listen to Bach's toccata and fugue in D minor for organ, often associated with spooky scenes in movies, you'll hear dramatic highs and lows typical of Baroque. Baroque composers loved contrast. For example, something called concerto became popular, which is a piece where one or more solo instruments, like a violin or flute, contrast with the full orchestra. They also often used terraced dynamics, meaning volumes jump from loud to soft sections rather than gradual crescendos. This period also gave us harpsichord music. The harpsichord was a key keyboard instrument before the piano was invented, and it gave us the basics of what we call tonal music, music in major and minor scales with a sense of key. The Baroque ended around 1750. The year Bach died is often used as a marker. By then, music was poised to shift into a lighter, clearer style, which came next. Classical period, 1750, 1820. Don't confuse this with classical music in general. The classical period is a specific era in the late 18th century, the time of Mozart, Haydn, and early Beethoven. In this period, the style became more elegant, balanced, and clear compared to the Baroque's complexity. Kids, Kittel.co. Classical period music often has a homophonic texture, meaning one main melody with accompaniment, rather than lots of independent melodies at once. If Baroque was like an elaborate lace or a complex puzzle, classical is like a clear story or a well-built building with symmetry. Composers focused on strong, catchy melodies and structured their music in neat forms, like sonata form, a way of organizing musical ideas that Mozart and Haydn used a lot. Kids, Kittle. Go. The orchestra expanded and standardized in the classical period. The piano was invented around 1700, and by Mozart's time it became common, gradually replacing the harpsichord. Kids, Kidle, Ko. The piano could play dynamics, soft and loud, by how hard you hit the keys. That's why its full name pianoforte literally means soft loud. Composers loved this new expressive power. Mozart wrote many piano pieces and concertos showing off what the piano could do, from delicate quiet parts to thunderous loud chords. Franz Joseph Haydn, often called father of the symphony, wrote over 100 symphonies. A symphony is a large work for orchestra, usually in 4 sections called movements. Kids, Kittel.co. The classical period is when symphonies and string quartets, a group of 2 violins, viola, cello, became really prominent. Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven all wrote famous pieces for those formats. What does classical era music sound like? It's graceful, tuneful, and sometimes playful. Mozart's music, for example, often feels effortlessly pretty and balanced. Think of something like Eine kleine Nachtmusik, a famous little serenade by Mozart. It's bright, cheery, and structured. Or Haydn's Surprise Symphony, which mostly is gentle but has a sudden loud chord, surprise, to startle you, showing classical wit and use of dynamics. Classical music also lined up with the Age of Enlightenment in philosophy, an emphasis on clarity, order, and reason. However, towards the end of this era, Beethoven, who bridged classical and the next era, Romantic, started pushing music to be more dramatic and emotional. Globally, in the late 18th century, Western classical forms were starting to spread due to colonization, but many cultures still had their own classical traditions intact. For instance, classical Indian music was thriving with composers like Tyagaraja in late 18th century. Classical Persian music had its own systems, etc. But Western classical, with a capital C, refers to this European style that has since been archived and celebrated worldwide. Romantic period. 19th century. 1000. 821,900. The Romantic period isn't about romance love songs, though some are, but more about an attitude of art. It emphasizes emotion, individual expression, and often nature or the supernatural. Composers in the 19th century like Chopin, Tchaikovsky, Verdi, Wagner, Schumann, Liszt, and later Brahms, etc., wrote music that aimed straight for the heart, music that told stories or expressed deep feelings. Romantic music often is very expressive and dramatic. They used even bigger orchestras, adding instruments like piccolos for very high sounds, tubas for very low, lots of percussion for power. Dynamics ranged from the faintest whisper on a solo violin to earth-shaking full orchestra climaxes. Tempo could be very flexible, a concept called rubato, meaning the performer can stretch or squeeze the timing for expressive effect. A lot of romantic music is programmatic, meaning it tells a story or paints a picture. For instance, Hector Berlioz wrote Symphonie Fantastique, which depicts an artist's opium-fueled dreams about his beloved, complete with a vision of a witch's Sabbath. Or Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, which musically depicts a battle, even calling for real cannon fire in performances. The Romantic era was big on ballets and operas too, like Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker, ballet, or Verdi's operas, which are full of drama and great tunes. Piano music flourished. The piano became the instrument for intimate expression at home and for virtuosic display in concerts. Frédéric Chopin, for example, wrote beautiful and technically challenging piano pieces, waltzes, nocturnes, polonaises, that are very romantic, expressive, sometimes melancholic, sometimes fiery. Franz Liszt was like a rock star of the piano, touring Europe and astonishing people with his flashy, passionate playing. People fainted at his concerts. He also invented the concept of a solo recital, just one performer on stage playing music. Before that, it was usually group concerts. Nationalism came into play too. Composers started using folk tunes or rhythms from their home countries in their classical music to evoke their national identity Kiddle.co. For example, Antonín Dvořák from Czech lands used folk-like melodies from Bohemia. Edvard Grieg incorporated Norwegian folk elements, and so on. This was a time many countries in Europe had rising national pride, and music reflected that. One could say Beethoven, late works, started the Romantic push, and by the late 1800s we have composers like Wagner writing massive operas with his own innovative style, and Mahler writing symphonies that last over an hour, containing a whole world of emotion, as he said. In summary, Romantic music is like turning the emotional dial of classical music up to 11. It's passionate, sometimes wild, sometimes achingly sweet, and it often paints a scene or tells a tale. If you listen to the opening of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, which technically is late classical, early romantic, da 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 dum, so.com. Oh, it immediately grabs you with emotion and urgency. That's the spirit the Romantics ran with. 20th century and modern music. 1900 today. The 20th century was a time of rapid change, and music saw an explosion of new ideas and styles. Composers in the early 1900s began to experiment and break a lot of the old rules. It's as if, after the lush Romantic period, some said, what if we try something totally different? One big change. Some composers moved away from tonality, the system of keys and scales that had dominated music for 200 Jiaowon years. For example, Arnold Schoenberg developed the 12-tone system, a method of composing where all 12 notes of the octave are treated equally, so there's no home key, kids, kiddle, taught co. His music, and that of his students, Berg and Webern, often sounds very dissonant and unusual. It was intended to break free from the old pattern skids, kiddle.co. This was called a tonal music, no tonal center. It's quite challenging to listen to, and was more an academic or art pursuit. Not popular in the mainstream concerts at first, but it had influence on later avant-garde music. Other composers kept tonality but stretched it or found new colors. Igor Stravinsky caused a riot, literally, with his ballet The Rite of Spring in 1913, which had pounding rhythms and unusual dissonances to depict ancient pagan rituals. Once the shock wore off, he became celebrated as one of the great composers of the Century Kids, Kiddle.co. Meanwhile, jazz was born. We talked about that. Early 1900s New Orleans and onward, and started influencing classical music too. For example, George Gershwin blended jazz and classical in pieces like Rhapsody and Blue Kids, Kiddle.co. In the mid-20th century, some composers like John Cage pushed boundaries even further. Cage wrote a piece that's just silence for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, called 433. He wanted to make people listen to ambient sounds as music. Others used electronic technology, from early experiments with tape recorders to modern synthesizers, to create new sounds. The field of electronic music and classical composition Kidla, co, but it's not all wild and dissonant. Many 20th century and 20th century composers continued to write music that is melodic or accessible, sometimes looking back to older styles. This is called neoclassicism or minimalism, etc. Minimalist composers like Philip Glass or John Adams use repeating patterns that change slowly. It's quite hypnotic. The 20th century also gave rise to film music. Composing music for movies became a big deal. Composers like John Williams, who wrote music for Star Wars, Harry Potter, etc., in the late 20th century blended classical orchestration with memorable themes, bringing symphonic music to mass audiences through cinema. And, of course, the 20th century saw the birth of modern genres, rock, pop, hip-hop, electronic dance, etc., which we discussed in genres. These aren't typically what we mean by classical music history, but they are absolutely part of the broad musical story. By the late 20th century, music was incredibly diverse. You could go from listening to a traditional orchestra concert, to a jazz club, to a rock festival, to a techno rave, each with totally different sounds, all coexisting. Now, in the 21st century, technology and music are deeply entwined. People can produce music on their laptops. Sharing music worldwide is instant via the internet. You can have a hit song made by a teen in their bedroom using just software instruments. Music keeps evolving, blending genres, using new tools like artificial intelligence maybe in the future to aid composing, etc. But also, we still enjoy the music of the past. It's not uncommon for someone to stream Beethoven's symphony in the morning, listen to Ed Sheeran in the afternoon, and play a video game with an electronic soundtrack in the evening. We live in a time where all this music is at our fingertips. In summary of history, we went from early humans tapping drums and blowing flutes, through the structured beauty of Bach and Mozart, the passionate swells of romantic symphonies, to the wild sonic experiments of the 20th century and the pop hits of today. Music history is like a huge tapestry woven from every era and culture. and it's still being woven. Who knows what the future of music will sound like? Maybe you'll be part of it. Now that we've learned about music's past, let's meet some of the people who made and are making musical history. Famous composers and performers who became legends for their contributions to music. Chapter 6. Meet the Music Makers. Famous composers and musicians. Throughout history, certain musicians have stood out for their incredible talent, creativity, or influence. In this chapter, we'll introduce some famous composers and musicians from different genres and time periods. The superstars of music, you might say. Each of these people has a cool story or fact that makes them memorable. This is by no means a complete list, but it's a great start to know some of the big names in music. Classical composers. Western classical music. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, 1756, 1791. A child prodigy from Austria who started composing music at the age of 5 Britannica.com. He traveled around Europe as a kid, amazing audiences with his piano and violin skills. Mozart wrote over 600 pieces in his short life, including famous operas, The Magic Flute, symphonies, and concertos. His music is known for being beautiful and balanced. It can sound playful and joyful, or deep and emotional when needed. Fun fact, he wrote his first piece at 5 years old, and his first full opera at age 12. Classicsforkids.com. Imagine writing music before you can do long division. Ludwig van Beethoven, 1770, 1827. A German composer who was a bridge between the classical and romantic eras. Beethoven is famous for his powerful symphonies, like the Fifth Symphony with the da-da-da-da-dum fate motif, and the Ninth Symphony with the Ode to Joy chorus. What's truly inspiring is that Beethoven began to lose his hearing in his late 20s and eventually became completely deaf, yet he continued to compose amazing music-to-music class. Comme classics for kids. He heard the music in his mind. In fact, he composed his Ninth Symphony when he was totally deaf, and at the premiere, he had to be turned around to see the audience applauding wildly because he couldn't hear the claps. Beethoven's music is full of emotion, sometimes stormy, sometimes triumphant. Johann Sebastian Bach, 1685, 1750. A Baroque era German composer and musician. Bach was a master of complex music. He wrote intricate fugues and beautiful pieces for organ, harpsichord, and more. He had a huge musical family. Bach himself had 20 children interlude, HK, though not all survived to adulthood, and several of them became composers too. Bach's music, like the Brandenburg Concertos or Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring, is revered for its craftsmanship. If Mozart's music sounds like effortless perfection, Bach sounds like logical, joyful patterns, almost like hearing math turn into beauty. He wasn't very famous in his own time outside his region, but later, composers realized his genius. Today, he's often considered one of the greatest composers ever. Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky, 1840, 1893. A Russian romantic composer known for wonderful melodies and colorful orchestration. If you've seen the Nutcracker Ballet at Christmas, that's Tchaikovsky's music, like the Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. He also wrote Swan Lake and Sleeping Beauty ballets, and epic symphonies and concertos. His music can be very emotional. He writes melodies that can make you want to dance, or cry, or both. Kids often like Tchaikovsky's music because of the ballets. The Nutcracker is full of fun characters, and dances for different candies and countries, each with distinctive music. Clara Schumann, 1819, 1896. Let's include a female composer. Clara was a great pianist and composer in the Romantic era. She started performing as a teenager and wowed Europe with her piano talent. She also wrote pieces for piano and songs. In her time, women were not encouraged to be composers, but Clara defied those norms. She was friends with other famous composers, like Brahms, and was highly respected. Her life is also a story of balance. She had 8 children, and still managed a performing and composing career. Supermom of music. Today, more of her music is being played as people recognize her contributions. Jazz legends. Louis Armstrong, 1901, 1971. An American trumpet player and singer, Louis Armstrong was one of the first great stars of Jazz Kids Kiddle.co. He had a nickname Satchmo and a gravelly, warm voice you can recognize instantly. He's famous for songs like What a Wonderful World, a lovely, gentle song, and When the Saints Go Marching In, as well as amazing trumpet playing. He helped bring jazz from New Orleans to the world. Louis was also known for his cheerful personality and big smile. He could hit high notes on the trumpet that were unbelievable, and he improvised solos that influenced every jazz musician after him. He even appeared in movies and on TV later, helping make jazz popular to wider audiences. Louis' style of singing sometimes included scat singing, using nonsense syllables to improvise like an instrument. Kids might find it fun that in some recordings he scats. Sounds like doobie-doo in place of words. Ella Fitzgerald, 1917, 1996. Known as the First Lady of Song, Ella had a pure voice and incredible range. She was a master of scat singing and could improvise with her voice as easily as a saxophone player. Ella recorded dozens of famous jazz albums, including song collections by great songwriters. The Great American Songbook. Songs like Dream a Little Dream of Me or Cheek to Cheek sparkle with her voice. She came from humble beginnings, but won an amateur contest as a teen, which launched her career. Fun fact, she even recorded a song where she forgets the lyrics and scats the rest brilliantly in Mac the Knife live performance, turning oops into magic. Duke Ellington, 1899, 1974. A brilliant jazz band leader and composer. Pianist. Duke Ellington led a big band, jazz, orchestra, for decades, playing at the Cotton Club in Harlem and touring. He wrote hundreds of pieces, including famous tunes like Take Thee a Train and It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing. Ellington's band had many great players, and he would write music to showcase their talents. He called his music American music rather than just jazz, because he felt it was more than a genre. It was an expression of life. Duke was super cool and elegant, often seen in a tuxedo at the piano. His compositions made jazz into an art form taken seriously around the world. Rock and pop stars. Elvis Presley, 1935, 1977. Often called the King of Rock and Roll, Elvis was one of the first megastars of pop rock music kids. Kiddle, Co. He burst onto the scene in the 1950s with his energetic songs and hip-shaking dance moves that drove teenagers wild. Songs like Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock, and Heartbreak Hotel became huge hits. Elvis was born in Mississippi, grew up in Tennessee, and was influenced by gospel and blues music. With his slick, black hair, flashy outfits, and signature voice, he became an icon. He also made movies. Elvis showed how rock music could bring black and white musical influences together and become massively popular. Fun fact, on his early TV performances, some camera operators were told not to film his gyrating hips because it was considered too shocking for the time. The Beatles. Not a single person, but a band of 4. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr. From Liverpool, England, they took the 1960s by storm, leading the British invasion of music in America and worldwide. Kids, Kiddle.co. The Beatles started with catchy rock, pop songs like She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand, causing Beatlemania. Crowds of screaming fans wherever they went. They evolved to write more complex and creative music later. Albums like Skeed, Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, changed what pop music could be. Famous songs include Let It Be, Hey Jude, Yellow Submarine, and many more. They experimented with different styles, including Indian music influences and orchestral arrangements. The Beatles' messages were often about love and peace, like All You Need Is Love. They are one of the best-selling music acts of all time and influenced countless artists after them. Michael Jackson, 1958, 2009. Michael was known as the King of Pop in Wikipedia.org. He started as a child star in the Jackson 5, a family band, and then went solo. His 1982 album Thriller is the best-selling album ever, featuring hits like Beat It, Billie Jean, and Thriller. Michael was an incredible dancer. He popularized the moonwalk, where he looked like he was gliding backwards. Many kids try to imitate that move. He had a unique voice and amazing stage presence. His music videos were like short films. The Thriller video even has a whole zombie dance scene and is over 13 minutes long. Michael's contributions to pop and dance have made him an enduring figure. Despite some controversies later in life, he remains one of the most influential pop musicians. If you put on Beat It, you might find your feet can't help but dance a little. Taylor Swift, 1989. A modern pop superstar. As of the 2020s, Taylor started as a country music teen, writing songs about her life growing up. She wrote or co-wrote all her songs, which is a bit rare in pop. Songs like Love Story and You Belong With Me made her famous in country and crossover pop. She then fully transitioned to pop with albums like 1989, with huge hits like Shake It Off, which is an upbeat song telling kids, and everyone, to ignore the haters and just dance. Taylor Swift is known for her storytelling in songs, often writing about her own experiences in a way that fans relate to deeply. She's also known for her connection with her fan base and putting on mega stadium shows. Mentioning Taylor shows that not all music legends are from long ago. New icons keep emerging. Hip-hop icons. Grandmaster Flash, 1958, and DJ Kool Herc, 1955. These are pioneers of hip-hop as a culture. DJ Kool Herc is often credited with throwing the Bronx Party in 1973, that essentially started hip-hop by using two turntables to extend breakbeats. TheKidShouldSeeThis.com. Grandmaster Flash innovated turntable techniques like quick mixing and scratching, together with groups like the Sugar Hill Gang, who had the first big rap hit Rapper's Delight in 1979. Kids, Kittle, Co., and Run DMC. 80s rap group. They brought rap from the streets to the mainstream. Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five song The Message was one of the first rap songs with serious social commentary. Don't push me, 'cause I'm close to the edge. Knowing about these figures shows how hip-hop grew from block parties to global phenomenon. Run DMC, a trio from the 1980s. Rev Run DMC, Jam Master Jay, who made hip-hop even more popular. They were the first rappers on MTV and first with a platinum album. They often wore Adidas sneakers and fedoras, establishing some of the fashion of hip-hop. One famous track is their version of Walk This Way, with rock band Aerosmith, which fused rock and rap, and was a huge hit, showing rap could blend with other genres and attract wide audiences. Beyoncé, 1981. Mentioning Beyoncé as a modern icon. She started in the late 90s with the group Destiny's Child hits like Say My Name, and then went solo. Beyoncé is often called Queen Bey by fans. She's known for her powerful voice, incredible performances, and hits like Single Ladies, Halo, and Crazy in Love. She also made a visual album, Lemonade, that was critically acclaimed. Beyoncé's influence spans R&B, pop, and hip-hop. She often collaborates with rappers, including her husband Jay-Z. She's one of the most famous and influential performers of the 21st century, inspiring many young artists and fans. World music greats. Bob Marley, 1945. 1981. The king of reggae music from Jamaica. Bob Marley and his band The Wailers brought reggae to the world stage. Songs like One Love, Three Little Birds, Don't Worry About a Thing, 'Cause Every Little Thing Is Gonna Be Alright, and Buffalo Soldier carry messages of peace, love, and unity. Chapter 8. Conclusion. Keep the music going. Congratulations. You've traveled through the world of music. From the ancient bone flutes of prehistory to the modern pop hits of today, from Bach and Mozart to jazz, rock, and hip-hop. You've learned about notes and rhythms, met famous composers and performers, and even tried out some musical fun yourself. That's a lot of musical knowledge for a fifth-grade reader. Here are a few key takeaways to remember. Music is universal. Every culture makes music, and it's a language of emotion and creativity that everyone can share. It can tell stories, convey feelings, or just be enjoyed for fun. Basic elements. Notes, with pitch, rhythm, beat and tempo. Melody tune, harmony, chords, and dynamics, loud, soft, are like the ingredients in the recipe of music hits. Britannica, comme kids, kidle. So, no matter the genre, these elements are at play. Variety of genres. From classical to hip-hop to reggae. Music comes in many flavors. Try listening to a variety. You might find something new you love. And knowing the history, like what came from where, makes listening more interesting because you hear connections. Instrument families. Strings, woodwinds, brass, percussion, keyboards, electronic. Each produces sound differently. Fact monster, compact monster. Maybe one of these families calls out to you to learn. If you love deep sounds, maybe try a brass or bass. If you love beats, percussion might be your thing. Sweet melodies, maybe a woodwind or violin. Famous figures. People like Mozart, Beethoven, Louis Armstrong, Elvis, and others changed music in their time and inspired future musicians. They were once kids, too, perhaps humming a tune or banging on a piano. With passion and practice, they made a mark. You can be inspired by them, but also remember to develop your own musical voice. Have fun with music. Whether or not you become a musician, music can be a joyful part of life. Sing in the shower, dance in your room, join a school band or choir, or just enjoy listening when you're happy or need cheering up. Music can be your friend through all times. Music is truly a lifelong journey. There is always more to explore, more songs to hear, instruments to try, and perhaps songs for you to create. Maybe you'll compose a song about your pet, or learn to play the guitar, or start a band with your friends. Maybe you'll just keep a playlist of favorite tunes that make you smile when you're down. All of those are wonderful ways to keep music in your life. As you grow, your musical tastes might change or expand, and that's part of the fun. The world of music is as vast as the ocean. You could swim in it forever and find new things. So keep listening, keep singing, or playing if you can, and keep an open mind. Who knows, in a few years, there might be a whole new genre that you'll help pioneer. In the words of a famous song, the hills are alive with the sound of music. And so is our world. Enjoy it, and perhaps add your own voice to the beautiful mix. The end, or rather, the beginning of your musical adventure. Now, go forth and make some noise. Air, we mean music. Love you. Oransi.